I wanted to mention an article that I found in the New York Times today that was disturbing. Actually, it wasn't today. It was a couple of weeks ago. And it's about how private schools are the new attraction for rich parents. There are schools now who are offering in-person teaching. And they're seeing a rapid rise in applications, even when tuition at a private elementary or high school is $50,000 a year or more. You talk about the divisions in this country. You talk about what COVID-19 is doing to so many people in this country who don't have the resources to, not just to fight back, but just to maintain an equal footing. It's incredible. There's an example that the Times talks about. They use a guy named Scott Anderson, who was living in Brooklyn with his wife and 2 children when the coronavirus hit. And if you remember, when that happened, all the city schools in New York were closed. And it sent his children into the netherworld of online education. The family moved to its weekend house in Dutchess County, New York. Its weekend house. The family, or the children, one is a freshman and the other a sophomore at an independent school in Brooklyn, where they had been since pre-kindergarten, were unhappy with their online classes. So their parents were paying an annual tuition of over $50,000 for each. So Mr. Anderson said, quote, "This is a time for them to strike out and explore things. Their school was completely unprepared for this style of teaching and for engaging a class," end quote. So as the summer wore on, the Andersons decided to enroll their children in a boarding school, the Frederick Gunn School in Washington, Connecticut, 45 minutes from their weekend house. In making a change they had never contemplated before the pandemic, they joined a surge of affluent parents who have upended their plans in order to get their children into independent schools holding in-person classes for the fall. It didn't come cheap. The Frederick Gunn School cost $66,523 for boarding students. But in-person learning was not going to be possible at many public schools and even at well-regarded day schools in big cities hit hard by the pandemic. You still with me? Carol Everett, executive director of the New Jersey Association of Independent Schools, said, quote, "Applications are up and enrollment is up. This is largely due to people fleeing the city and public school parents disappointed that their schools haven't opened in person. It really picked up over the summer and has continued into the fall," end quote. The National Association of Independent Schools said a couple of months ago that 58% of its schools had reported an increase in interest from the previous summer. That uptick has helped the private, day, and boarding schools shore up their balance sheets, especially when some of their most lucrative students didn't return this year. Because full-pay international students, many from Asia, are charged as much as $75,000 a year. Peter Becker, head of the Frederick Gunn School, said, quote, "We have families who were 6 months ago enrolled in day schools, primarily in New York, and boarding school wasn't on their radar," end quote. So the surge in summer and fall applications for schools offering in-person education has been as uneven geographically and economically as the coronavirus itself. In the Northeast of the United States, it's boom time. 36% of schools in New England reported a rise in enrollment from last year, the largest increase in the nation. As schools opened in September, But the New York metropolitan area reported a 56% drop in private school enrollment. Sacred Heart in Greenwich, Connecticut accepted 22 students after the normal admission cycle closed and would have accepted more if certain grades were not full, said the head of the school. At Doane Academy, a day school for kindergarten through 12th grade in Burlington, New Jersey, 20 new students are entering, which is substantial given that the school now just has 253 students, said the head of the school. Jay Lashley, director of admissions at Berkeley Prep in Tampa, said he had fielded a surge in calls from parents in Chicago and New York who wanted to move. All right, that's enough. I can't do any more of that. What the article points out, obviously, and the reason it caught my attention, is the incredible disparity. Once again, a lot of it based on all sorts of different demographics. But one of the primary differences is the race of the students who can get admitted to these schools and the income of their parents. When you have two kids and each kid costs $63,000 a year to go to a private boarding school to be in high school, $63,000 a year, which works out, if my math is correct, to $126,000 a year to send your two kids just to school. There is something terribly wrong with that, isn't there? I mean, seriously, something really, really wrong with that. Maybe with a new education secretary, once Betsy DeVos is broomed, maybe with a new education secretary, some of this stuff will change, although I doubt it. Because one thing Joe Biden is not going to do is uproot the plantation capitalism that dominates in this country. It's not going to happen. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.